Hey everybody, welcome to this mid-month energy update, which I never normally do, but over recent days, the escalation of the coronavirus around the world makes it feel highly necessary. But please be warned, this is probably going to be a little raw and a little more rough than usual, because I have about 9 themes for you that I'm going to try and get through fast. So that I don't take up too much of your time, but at the same time, these are the 9 things that I felt called to transmit to you today, so that hopefully you can navigate this period of time with as much grace, compassion for yourself and for others as possible. That's my intent with this broadcast. This is not medical advice. This is not news. This is how to navigate the energetics of what we're going through right now. So, in no particular order of importance, the gift and the challenge side of what we're going through right now is very clear, and presence is going to be the gift of this time and the challenge of this time. So we're being called to become very present to ourselves, our feelings, our lives, what it is to be a human being, through shock and through the disruption of our patterns. So presence through shock and the disruption of our patterns. Now, this can go either way. You know, presence can be a wonderful thing. It can lead you to realize how busy you've been. And actually, this slowing down period that we're all in as a world while we navigate this is going to be really important for you to be present and to take a breath and to take some time. So that's the gift side. The challenge side can be you become very present with feelings that you normally might be too distracted by your patterns and by all the things that we all do daily. This is the time to really get in touch with them. So how that shows up for you is going to be one thing, but how that's showing up in the world at large is going to be another. And dealing with both of those aspects is going to be your gift and your challenge in the coming months. So when the patterns disappear, we tend to feel naked, open, vulnerable. Now, naked, open, vulnerable can feel joyous. Naked, open, vulnerable can feel terrifying, depending on that moment of the day, where you're at, how much support you have in your life. So bliss, clarity, freedom, an awareness of the things that you really need and want to change in your life are going to come up through this next few weeks. Because as the world has stopped, and as the patterns have been interrupted, there is an enormous awakening energy going on, which might show up as fear for some people initially, might show up as an almighty emotional purge. But as we go through this and as the months pass and we get further away from this whole experience that we're in right now, there's going to be a clarity of change that will come to you personally and that will also come to us as a collective world. So change is a huge focus right now. This is a game changer. And this is one of the many experiences that have been prophesied, predicted for a long time. So those of you who've been waiting for the planet to go through its many transitions, if you hadn't already been tracking how many things have been happening in the last few years, here is one that no one can avoid, because this is starting to affect the whole world. So in that sense, it's bringing us together. When our patterns remove, when they drop, even if just for a short while, what it leads to is new growth and new ways of being. So again, your initial feeling might be the shock of it. It can make you feel tired, wired, disoriented, confused. Don't be surprised if you're a bit weird right now. It would be surprising if you weren't a bit weird at certain moments of the day. And I say that not to implant that in your consciousness. If you are light and bright through this the whole time, fantastic. But remember, we're an energy ocean as a people, and you can feel the energy in the world, whether you're engaging with people or whether you're just tapping into what's going on outside. There is a huge 360-degree axis turn going on right now. So as sensitives, as awakened humans, as humans who are aware we're human, but we're also a soul, this is going to be the real time to practice grounding yourself, balancing yourself as you navigate having a foot in each world. Okay, this leads me to social reactions and fears and trauma. So I've heard a lot over the last few days, people who are disappointed at the reactions of others, or, you know, annoyed that someone was in the grocery store with 3 carts of shopping, and I totally get it. But it's interesting, in the March energy update, I spoke about March being a time to transmute our shadows, and as it always works, I didn't fully understand what was going to be the opportunity that would bring that along, because as an intuitive, you don't know often what you're saying or why you're saying it until time plays out. So let other people's reactions to this be personal and be complicated. What I mean by that is, if you're annoyed at the way that somebody is handling what's going on in the world right now, that's okay. Notice that you're annoyed. Don't blame them for it. Don't crap talk about them to their friends or to other people. Catch the part of you that doesn't like the way that they're reacting, but also isn't accepting the way that they're reacting. We react at the level of our consciousness, the level of our fear, and the level of our love. We react at the level of our consciousness, the level of our fear, and the level of our love. So, the other thing to notice is there might be somebody who you see is freaking out and you don't like the amount of fear that they've got. And so you go home and say, oh, they're just in constant fear, but maybe an hour later they aren't. This is going to be a pendulum swing for everybody. In one moment, people might feel really okay about what's going on. And this is beyond the personal too, because I've heard some people say, oh, well, I'm not worried about catching it. I'm not worried about catching it either. It's not really I don't have fear of that, but I am aware that there are people who are vulnerable to this, and that the healthcare system, the doctors, the nurses, they're in a very vulnerable position on the front line. So everything that we as a community and a collective can do to mitigate the spread is really important. So let reactions be complicated and personal to people. And remember, the survival and the fear instinct is triggered right now. It's root chakra stuff. So if you see someone acting like they're out of their head, they're not thinking clearly, they're not here, they're in survival mode. So it's okay. But you're going to have to allow yourself to not be surprised by how certain people react, or to investigate why you're surprised or why it bothers you, because there's some mirror emotion for you. So the best place you can come from is, I would like to hold compassion for everybody. Is there anyone I can help? Or do I feel like this is not the time to be helping people? I need to get me centered. I need to go home for a moment. I need to sit quietly for a moment. Okay. Be very mindful and not mindless of your exposure to the news feed, whether that's social media or whatever, or whether that's the news feed of other people. Be very mindful and not mindless about your exposure to it. Now, what I mean by this is, notice how you're feeling and keep tracking how you're feeling. Notice if you suddenly go off and you start noticing you're a bit more anxious. What were you just looking at? What were you just doing? Who were you just talking to? We're going to be very sensitive. It's interesting that it's called the coronavirus, because the energy is going to be very viral at this point too. So fear is going to be very magnetic, but so is love. We are really dealing with a very stretched dualistic scale in this period. So fear is here, love is here. And if you're around someone in fear, and you're not aware you're around someone in fear, and you're not paying attention to the energy exchange between the two of you and holding your own boundary and just observing them, maybe offering something, or maybe moving away if you feel like you aren't the person to help them out of their fear, it's going to get tricky for you, because that fear will magnetize, but you may or may not notice it. You'll walk away and you'll feel a bit more frenzied, but you won't have paid attention to when the energy transfer took place. Equally, people who hold love, hold peace, hold calm, hold a vibration of stillness, they're going to be magnetic to you too. So at different moments, at different times of the day, because there's no right or wrong here, you'll be able to gravitate more toward fear or more toward love, peace, calm. And like I said, I want you to really ingrain this, because my guides have been saying this to me a lot the last 2 days. None of us are doing anything wrong if we have a little freak out moment. It's part of what's going around energetically. So even if your soul knows you will weather this storm and come out the other side, what you're picking up on is the electrical energy everywhere in people. Okay. Make really good choices around connection and choices around everything. So this is a time to really practice the talk. Can we walk the talk? Can we bring presence and mindfulness into everything that we're doing at a time we're going to really need to be able to do that? Especially, this will show up for anyone who is in a country or a city or a region where they're calling it social distancing. One of our portal community members yesterday said we should call it physical distancing, not social distancing. And I thought that's nice. I like that because we can all still stay connected to each other through the tools we have, like the internet, the phone. If you aren't with community, if you're alone or living in an isolated way. So especially for those of you who might be isolated right now, the gift and the challenge will be your presence and mindfulness about everything that you're doing. So it's like all the lights are going on very quickly. That's what this does to the human soul and human psyche, an experience like this. So be very mindful around what you choose to do. This is a great time, a great period of time to live a quieter life and tend to certain things that you perhaps have abandoned or overlooked or haven't really given yourself the time to do. So the other side of this is the energy in coming weeks will be a dance between fear and heightened intuition. So I've already addressed the fear side enough. You know, your fears might come up, past fears might come up, fears about what's going on in the outside world might come up, fears for the people who are on the front lines and what they're going through. You may have fears because you yourself are, you know, in a more vulnerable group around this virus, and whether that's being older or a little immune challenged or having lung issues. So look after yourself, vitamin C, boost your immune system as much as you can, really hunker down in order to give yourself that time. But the other side is going to be heightened intuition and heightened clarity. And I mentioned clarity at the very beginning. This is going to be a time of clarity like no other. You're going to see things very clearly for yourself, and months from now and in the next year, the world is going to have a very different viewpoint about things because of this. Again, it's a challenge at times, but it's also going to reveal itself to have had many gift aspects to moving us forward as a society and shaking off the old. So, with fear, we're in the 3D survival realm. It's all about this three-dimensional world. It's all about the human survival. With intuition, it's all about the higher realms. So right now, just as I said, fear and love is stretched, the 3D realms and the higher realms are really strong. And we're going up and down a scale. It's like the whole world is suddenly stretched and opened. And that will be the experience that you'll be having in yourself as a soul and as a human being in the coming weeks. This is a time of awakening activation. You know, for many, many years, I and many other people have talked about what we've all received and what's been prophesied, that this is going to be a big time of awakening on the planet. And I think sometimes we would like to think that just comes through meditation, but often, more often than not, what I've seen for us as humans is we need a jolt. And when we have a jolt, a near-death experience, or the loss of a loved one, or suddenly something disappears in our life that we always thought was going to be there, that awakens us. It takes us out of the slightly asleep pattern. So there is an enormous awakening activation at work on the planet in this next month or so. And it's not going to crystallize or make sense or show itself. Like I said, it will be at least 9 to 12 months from now that things will start to appear as a result of this period that we're in. But this is the great disruptive force that is disrupting a lot of patterns, a lot of agendas, and nobody's getting out of this without a little bit of chaos that disrupts the patterns to lift the consciousness higher, no matter what their agenda is. Okay, so the one thing I want to bring up here is those of you who have managed to leave your body, you know, you prefer being in the higher realms, you prefer being etheric, you don't identify with being human, you know, you see yourself as a soul who got dropped on the wrong planet, which can also be a stage of spirituality and awakening, and that's okay. But for those of you that don't like being in the body and don't like being on the earth, this is going to be a really big time for you, because you're going to be really brought into the body. So I'd like to repeat something to you that the Z's have said for many years, the guides that I channel. They say no one is here on the earth incarnate by mistake. That if you're in a human body, there is something for you to do, be, experience, and learn here, because it's very easy to die. They're always saying that. We can be taken off the planet, we can leave our body very easily. The soul can just make a decision with our exit points that are planned for us along through our life, and we can be out. So if you're still here, this is going to be a very interesting time for those of you who felt like you don't really want to put your feet in the ground. You don't really want to be here on the earth. You don't really like it. It's time for you to jump into your body over the next year or two and bring to this world more of the energy that you want to see, more of the energy that you want to feel, because that's what you're here for. So whether you do that in personal relationships or your work or both, it doesn't matter. You're going to need to embody. This is a time of the body. Equally, those people who have been very body-based, very pattern-based, very 3D survival, this is going to be an interesting time for them, and it's going to disrupt a lot of their emotions. Especially when people are living a quieter life, forced into family dynamics, personal relationships. A lot is going to come up for a lot of people. So there's going to be a lot of people navigating emotional and psychological experiences that they don't recognize, they don't understand. And to some degree, that will be true for all of us, but especially for those people who haven't really done much self-investigation yet, or haven't necessarily opened their consciousness very much to what life is, who they are, what more there is to life. This is going to be painful and difficult for a lot of those people, and it's going to be enlightening and good for a whole number of them. So depending on where they are and depending on how quickly they use this as a catalyst or how long they need to use this as a catalyst, some of the people that you know, some of the people that you see, their hearts are going to be hurting and they'll be confused. So even if you don't feel like you want to engage with people, even if you feel like you need time and space to yourself, try and hold some love in your heart for the suffering that will be going on in this time, even if you yourself are able to keep yourself fairly calm, fairly stable, fairly neutral. Really important that we hold that love for one another, because this is affecting all of us and in very different ways, but we are in it together. So if you're somebody who has felt like this thing is outside you, that's not true, because it's going to affect people that you know. I'm not saying that that means people are going to die necessarily. We've seen the death statistics are really quite low, but many people will contract it, and what needs to be done now is measures and steps taken to mitigate the pressure on the healthcare systems and the pressure when there are those people who are going to be vulnerable to this, that they're able to get the help they need rather than our systems being overwhelmed and not able to help those people. So, personal dynamics will shift. A lot of personal relationship stuff is going to come up over the next month or two. Ask yourself, who needs my help? Especially if they are alone or living alone and they're in isolation. Who can you send a message to or reach out to in some way? And again, never do this in a forced, resentful way. You know, if you're like, I can't help anybody, I need to help myself today, good, that's the right attitude. Get yourself back to center, and then you may have the energy to just send someone a little message or call them or reach out just to check they're okay. Because there are going to be people who will feel especially isolated in this time. And this is going to be one of the interesting things about the next couple of months. It's going to show where unlivable situations are very extreme and can no longer hold and support people. So what I mean by that is, what do I mean by that? Can you help me out with that one? Okay. So the edges are going to be shown. The edges of society, the most vulnerable areas of society, this is going to reveal a lot about that, which is why there's going to be a sea change in people's attitudes. And again, it's already started. It's going to take some years to really show up. But this is a really important period of our history that we will look back on and see as very change-making. Okay, going back to my notes. We're almost at the last few. So this is the change and the time that has been forecast for a very long time. Now is the time to use your tools, to go within, to deepen your practice, to ground, to balance, so that you're useful to yourself and so that you're useful to others. It's a worldwide phenomenon, so it's connecting us and showing us how we're all connected, and it will disrupt some of the division energy that has been generated over the last 4, 5, 6 years. This division energy that we've seen being used against people and to separate people, ironically, even though there are going to be many parts of the world where isolation is needed, it's actually going to have the opposite effect energetically. It's going to bring us more together, both during it and when we're through it. And it's going to reveal the human spirit in a way that our patterns, distractions, and the way we live our life and are asked and encouraged to live our lives doesn't necessarily allow us to reveal. So a great reveal will come from this, and a great change. And I'm curious to see what that is too, but I hear that loud and clear. When I did yesterday's energy tune-up live for the portal, there was a lot that came through about that. And so that's why I'm here today. I wanted to share this with you. For those of you who aren't on my newsletter and were coming to our Impact the World event in April, as you may have guessed, and you will have received the email, we have postponed that event to the end of September. For any of you wondering about our June tour of Europe, we're in the unknown about that too. So we will, of course, refund anybody if we do have to make a change on that, but we don't plan to make any decisions on that until about May 1st, unless any decisions are made worldwide before that, which make the decision for us. If you want to stay connected to me and my work, you can follow me on Facebook, you can subscribe to this channel. We have a free weekly podcast called Impact the World, where I speak to people who are changing the world in their own way, bringing impact to the world, whether that's on a small scale or a large scale, because it's all the same. You can affect millions of people, you can affect 3 people. It's all the same energetically. So the show is designed to empower creatives, healers, change makers to do their work in the world. And I feel like there has never been a more important time for us to show up than now. So thank you so much, everyone. Big love, and I'll see you in about 2 weeks' time for the April energy update, which, who knows, I may be recording in my garden. We shall see. Big love.